The air at Fort Ashland's shooting range was thick with tension and the acrid scent of gunpowder. Navy SEAL candidates lined up in their combat fatigues, rifles slung over their shoulders, sweat beading on their foreheads as the midday sun beat down. Each man was determined to prove himself, knowing this wasn't just practice, it was survival. At the far end of the line, Amara King stood quietly. Her boots were polished, her uniform pristine, and her braids tucked neatly beneath her cap. She was shorter than most of the men, her lean frame and calm posture making her stand out like a soft note in the middle of a drum line. Colonel Harris, a broad-shouldered man with a grizzled beard and eyes hardened by 30 years of combat, paced in front of the recruits. His voice was like gravel. "This isn't a damn video game," he barked. "Every shot counts. SEALs don't miss." As Harris surveyed the line, his gaze stopped on Amara. He frowned. "You there? What are you doing in my range?" Amara lifted her chin slightly. "Requesting permission to join today's drill, sir." The other recruits snickered. One leaned over to whisper to his buddy, "Is she serious? That rifle'll knock her flat." Harris let out a low chuckle that grew into a full, booming laugh. You want to fire with these men? Sweetheart, this isn't a picnic. Those targets aren't cans on a fence post." "Yes, sir," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the laughter around her. The colonel shook his head and gestured to the weapon rack. "Fine. Let's see what you've got. But don't cry to me when you can't even hit the paper." Amara stepped forward, her boots echoing on the concrete floor. The snickers grew louder, but she ignored them. To her, the voices were just background noise. She selected an M4 carbine from the rack, checked the chamber with practiced precision, and walked to the firing line. The range went quiet. Even Harris crossed his arms, smirking. "This ought to be good," he muttered. Amara adjusted her stance, took a slow breath, and lined up her shot. And then, with a calmness that seemed out of place on that range, she pulled the trigger. Bang! The first shot rang out, echoing across the field. Harris's smirk froze as the electronic scoreboard beeped. The shot was dead center. The sharp crack of the rifle seemed to hang in the air longer than it should have. Every eye in the room turned to the digital scoreboard overhead, its bright red light blinking as it analyzed the shot. Then came the result, a perfect bullseye. For a moment, no one spoke. The same men who had been smirking and whispering now stood stiff, their mouths slightly open. Even Colonel Harris, who had seen his share of prodigies over decades of service, felt a flicker of surprise crawl across his hardened features. "Lucky shot," he said gruffly, as if trying to convince himself. But Amara didn't respond. She simply exhaled, adjusted her grip, and fired again. Bang! The second shot landed directly on top of the first, so precise that the sensor hesitated before confirming the result. Another bullseye. Now the whispers began. "No way," someone muttered under their breath. Another recruit tilted his head, staring at her like he was seeing a ghost. Colonel Harris's smirk had long faded. His jaw tightened as he watched the young woman reload with smooth, practiced movements. "Keep going," he barked, trying to inject steel back into his voice. Amara obliged. One by one, each shot echoed through the range. And one by one, each round found its home in the exact center of the target. The electronic scoreboard began to beep faster, stacking perfect scores in a row. By the 10th shot, the recruits had gone silent. Some lowered their rifles entirely, no longer able to focus on their own drills. All eyes were fixed on the woman at the end of the line, the one they had laughed at moments earlier. Colonel Harris stepped forward, his boots heavy against the concrete floor. "Switch weapons," he ordered. "That rifle might be tuned too perfectly. Use the standard issue sidearm." Amara didn't hesitate. She holstered the rifle, picked up the sidearm, and squared her shoulders. Bang! Another bullseye. "Full auto burst," Harris demanded, trying to find a weakness in her performance. She flicked the setting, fired in a controlled spray. The bullets tore through the target in a perfect cluster that looked more like a single hole than a group of individual rounds. The colonel felt a chill run through him. This wasn't luck. This wasn't even elite skill. This was something else entirely. When Amara placed the pistol back on the rack, she looked up and met his eyes for the first time. Her calm gaze held no smugness, no defiance, just quiet certainty. "Sir," she said softly. "Would you like me to continue?" Colonel Harris didn't answer. For once in his career, he was at a loss for words. By the next morning, word of Amara King's performance had spread like wildfire across the base. Soldiers, instructors, and even high-ranking officers whispered about the young black woman who had stunned Colonel Harris and his SEAL candidates. Some dismissed it as rumor, others came to the range to see for themselves. When Amara arrived for her second day of shooting drills, the observation deck was packed. Hardened SEAL instructors with years of combat experience leaned against the rails, skeptical but curious. Younger recruits nudged each other, waiting for her to falter and prove yesterday had been nothing more than beginner's luck. Colonel Harris stood with his arms folded, his expression unreadable. But beneath the surface, his pride as an instructor was at war with something new, uncertainty. "We're going to push you today," Harris said gruffly as Amara approached the firing line. "This isn't a carnival trick anymore. You're about to face the SEAL qualification course, the one we use to train the best shooters in the world." Amara didn't flinch. "Understood, sir. Targets will move," he continued. "They'll pop up randomly, vary in distance, speed, and size. Even my best guys struggle to complete it without misses." Amara nodded once, calm as ever. The moment the buzzer sounded, a dozen targets sprang to life, darting side to side, vanishing and reappearing at odd angles. The crowd murmured as Amara raised her rifle. Bang! 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 Each shot was deliberate, measured. One by one, the targets dropped before they could retreat. Amara's body moved with the flow of the course, every adjustment precise, every squeeze of the trigger accompanied by the soft, efficient sound of success. "Look at her groupings," one instructor whispered, leaning forward. That's surgical." At the halfway point, Harris barked, "Increase difficulty." The system responded, doubling the targets and speeding up their movements. Even the seasoned SEALs watching shook their heads. "That'll break her," one muttered. But it didn't. Amara's focus never wavered. Her hands moved with unshakable steadiness, her eyes locked on the field as if seeing through chaos itself. By the end of the drill, the entire range was silent. The scoreboard flashed, new record, fastest time. Perfect accuracy. The SEALs in the observation deck erupted into murmurs. Some clapped. Others stared in stunned disbelief. "She just shattered every record we've ever had," an instructor whispered. Amara lowered her weapon and turned to Harris. "Sir," she said softly, "do you want me to run it again?" For the first time in years, the colonel's hard mask cracked. He let out a low chuckle, not mocking this time, but full of awe. "I don't think you need to," he said. The range had been cleared for a private meeting. Colonel Harris sat behind his desk, staring at Amara King, who stood at attention before him. The usual sharpness in his eyes was gone, replaced with something unfamiliar, respect. He had spent decades training Navy SEALs, molding raw talent into elite warriors. He had seen men break under pressure, seen natural shooters crumble when the stakes rose. But Amara, she was different. "Sit down, King," Harris said finally, gesturing to the chair across from him. Amara hesitated. "Sir, that's an order," he added, softer this time. She sat. Harris leaned forward, folding his hands. "You embarrassed a lot of men out there," he said. "Hell, you embarrassed me." "That wasn't my intention, sir." "I know," he admitted. "And that's what makes it worse." For a moment, silence filled the room. Harris studied her face, the calm, steady eyes that never once wavered even under the weight of the entire SEAL community's expectations. "Do you know how many people, men, have walked into that range thinking they're the best, only to fall apart in seconds?" he asked. Yes, sir. Do you know how many black women I've seen even try? Amara's gaze hardened. Not many, sir. I've noticed. Harris exhaled slowly. That's on us. That's on me. You've got something most shooters can't even fake. Focus. Calm. And skill I can't teach, because it's already in you. Amara tilted her head slightly. Why are you telling me this, sir? Because I don't want you stopping here. Harris pushed a folder across the desk. This is a recommendation for SEAL training. If you're willing, I want you in the program. Amara's eyes flickered for the first time, surprise cracking her calm exterior. You're serious? As a heart attack, Harris said. You don't just belong on that range. You belong out there, making history. Amara's lips curved into the smallest smile. Yes, sir. I won't let you down. You haven't yet, Harris replied, standing to shake her hand. For the first time, it wasn't the colonel looking down on her. It was Harris, seeing an equal. Months later, the SEAL training grounds buzzed with activity as new recruits pushed through their grueling exercises. Amidst them, Amara King stood tall in her crisp uniform, eyes sharp as she surveyed the course. She wasn't just a trainee anymore. She was the trainee everyone whispered about, the first black woman to ever qualify for the SEAL program and already a legend in her own right. King, barked the instructor. Live fire exercise. You ready? Yes, sir. Amara grabbed her rifle and stepped onto the course. Targets popped up from all directions, moving, spinning, disappearing into shadows. To any other candidate, it would have been overwhelming. But Amara moved with quiet precision. Bang. 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 Each shot struck its mark. Recruits stopped to watch, jaws slack as she cleared the course in record time. By the end, the scoreboard flashed again, new record, fastest clear time. Perfect accuracy. The range erupted in cheers. Even the toughest instructors shook their heads in disbelief. She didn't just break records, one whispered. She's rewriting the SEAL handbook. Back at the base, a plaque had been hung in her honor. It read, Amara King, the one who silenced the room. Recruits would walk past it every day, some scoffing, others inspired. And whenever a new hotshot laughed at her photo, the instructors would grin. Go ahead. Laugh, they'd say. Then watch what happens when she fires. Amara King had done more than earn respect. She had changed the game forever.